Hi, I'm Barry Maxwell, bringing you History 225, titled History and Politics of the Middle East. Middle East, whoa, complicated place. I'll give you a little bit of time to take a look at this picture and notice the title up to the minute, but could change any minute, set of relationships. And if you want to look at this more, I'll let you pause it. And no surprise to you, by the end of the course, this will make a whole lot more sense than it does now. So, why should you care? Well, there's a lot of stuff going on there that affects the rest of the world, especially us here in America. Islamic terrorism being one. Ever wondered why there's thousands of Middle Eastern Muslims being believers in the religion of Islam, and the ones I'm talking about, mostly Arab in ethnicity, that want to kill Americans wherever, whenever they can. Really small, tiny minority of the Muslims in the world, but the group of folks that brought you Al-Qaeda and some related groups that have caused the U.S. some problems. We went to war in Iraq several times. Things are somewhat quieter there with us now, but still issues going on with Al-Qaeda and other things, so we could go back. Why should we care? Why did we go there in the first place? And why might we be back? The Arab-Israeli conflict, been going on for a little less than 100 years. Heavy U.S. involvement in about the last 30, to the tune of $3, $4, $5 billion a year, and a lot of diplomatic activity on the part of the U.S., which gets us in some trouble and some botherment with other people in the world that don't understand why we support Israel the way we do, and it's good to know about that. You've all heard about oil. I'm sure all of you either drive or have driven in cars powered by gasoline. The U.S. uses quite a bit of it, gets a lot from the outside world, some of which comes from the Middle East, and a whole lot more goes to our allies and trading partners. And the amount we use in the world goes up every day. Again, much of it from the Middle East. And finally, weapons of mass destruction, whether it's chemical weapons in Syria, the weapons that were and then were not in Iraq, possible nuclear weapons in Iran, all kinds of issues about that that are good to know about. So, going back a ways in our involvement there, we're going to take a look at the arrival of Islam as a religion and how it forms into the community of the believers in Islam, otherwise known as Muslims, how that grows into a very sophisticated, big empire hundreds of years ago, very famous and well-developed Arab civilization and Islamic empires, and what became of them and why that's still an issue today. The Europeans several hundred years ago get heavily involved in the Middle East in ways that are still causing problems today, with memories and dislikes about what happened, which we need to know about because we figure into that as well. The rise of oil. It was only a little over 100 years ago that oil was even discovered there. Didn't become quite as big a deal until about 70, 80 years ago, and has remained a big deal ever since. And we'll take a look at that. Jews have been a part of Middle East history going back into pre-recorded history. And more recently, though, in their relationship to Palestine, their historic ties, how the Holocaust out of World War II played into that, and why that's still such a big deal today. And finally, the U.S. and its Cold War struggle with the Soviet Union and Western and Eastern nations on both sides. Tremendous impact on the Middle East, and had a lot to do with why we got involved there also. So, how are we going to examine this? Well, we're going to take a look at history, because history has a lot to do with how people feel about things today, what motivates them today, what gets them excited, unexcited, what they'll kill over. That's history, and how they got there is something you need to know, or you don't know what's going on, and you don't know how to predict what's going to happen. So we're going to do a little bit to acquaint you with the people, culture, and religion of the Middle East, mainly looking at Arabs and the religion of Islam, as it derived from the Arabian Peninsula. We're going to look at the current politics and events going on in the region as we kind of tie them into what's happened in the past, shaping what's going on now. And for those of us that have a special knowledge of the region, we're going to share what we know about that. Me especially, but I'm sure some of our students in this course will know some things that will be of interest to the rest of us. And always, again, anything we talk about is going to have a connection to today. And if you're not sure what it is, ask and I'll make that connection for you. So, key topics. Again, Arab culture, where it came from, why, and where it came from is key because the Arabian Peninsula is a spot in the world like not too many other and had a huge impact on how that culture came about and how it is today for that matter. The religion of Islam, how it's formed into a community that even though it's 1 billion people strong, used itself in a lot of ways as a brother or sisterhood with connections all over the world. The rise and fall of the Arab and Islamic empires, again starting off from one small town, expanding just a few years into a 3-continent empire with learning that rivaled anything that the Roman Empire did. And then how it fragments and gets attacked from the outside, especially the Mongol invasion, and long-standing memories of that, and later invasions and others leading to current days animosities and enmities that are still out there, leading into the European nations' involvement in their conflict with the Arabs and especially the Ottoman Empire. Britain especially having the biggest impact on the Middle East until after World War II when the U.S. impact becomes significant. And the subsequent growth of Arab nationalism, Arabs thinking that they want to have their own country and get rid of the foreigners that have been telling them what to do, or so it seems from their perspective, and we'll look at that. We'll go through where oil got discovered, why it became such a big deal, where, and what kind of impacts that's had, both good and bad. The growth of something called Jewish Zionism, which led to a lot of pressure to form the State of Israel, which is only formed in 1948, not that long ago. And a look at the Jewish and Arab cultures, which used to get along with each other pretty well, again, up until about the last 100 years when the conflict over that small plot of ground in the Middle East became so intense. We'll look at conflicts that have taken place in the Persian Gulf, issues between two big branches of Islam, the Shias and the Sunnis, and the arguments they have going way back to include all the way up to today. More modern versus more traditional and possibly radical believers in Islam. And just conflicts between Arab and Persian cultures. The two are not the same, different languages, different ethnic history, and very different takes on culture. They don't always get along so well either. How the end of the Cold War came about, and especially its impact on what happened with nations in the area, and the rise of Islamist terrorism that has its roots in that conflict. And again, as always, looking at current politics and events in the region. So, in any history class, we want to understand that history and the truth of history can be a matter of perspective. Historians don't always agree. There's different reports, whereas same people can see one event and report it differently, and that makes its way into the history books in different perspectives. So we'll look at what some of those are, how they came about, and do the best we can to get to the truth of the matter, but understand we may not know for sure, and that those different truths will motivate people very differently. And those different motivations, different narratives, and different views of history may be more important than what actually happened, because it's those views of history that empower people today to have strong feelings and take strong actions. So, in this class, we're going to be looking at some very emotional issues. Jewishness, what it is to be a Muslim, how the two might conflict, Arabs versus Israelis, and a lot of other things that people might have very strong beliefs about. I'm going to ask that in this class we be as objective as possible, not let our perceptions and especially prejudices get the better of us, and take a more academic, detached view and just try and see what's going on and what has gone on. So I ask you to be tolerant of other views, other cultures, other religions. We all have our misconceptions about the Middle East and hope to dispel some of them here. But because we're going to cram a lot of years of history into just a few weeks, be patient. I've had to make a lot of choices about what does and especially does not get included. And if you feel I've missed something, do speak up. So look forward to working with you in the class, and we'll move on and get started.